I just want to give some perspective and encouragement to the young people out there that are trying to break through in life. You see, I'm 67 years old and I was born in 1958. So the first 6 years of my life were lived under Jim Crow here in the South. Legalized discrimination, legalized racism, separation of the races. When I went to school, I went to an all black Jim Crow school, inferior, hand me down books, old buildings, where the white school was right up the street, probably a couple of miles. Behind me is my book, One Eighth of a Man, Hate for the Skin I'm in. You can find that on Amazon.com. But as I look back over my life, my career, my education, all of those things, I come to the conclusion that I never allowed racism and or discrimination to stop me from getting where I wanted to go. There was plenty of it. It was legal when I came into this world. So I always had the thought process, and I don't know where it came from. My parents weren't highly educated people. My father made it through the sixth grade. My mother graduated high school. But I always had this thing inside of me that I'm going to be better than everybody else until I tapped out my capabilities. And what I mean by that is if you were going to be smarter than I was, get better grades than I was, then it was going to be a limitation of my capabilities, not of my effort. So, at the early age, when I went to that Jim Crow school, I had a first grade teacher that told me, "You're smart and you can be anything you want to be." That stuck with me my whole life. So, I tried to be smarter, to write earlier, to get better grades than everyone else around me. That was my internal goal, even from the first grade. Didn't go to kindergarten, we didn't have it when I started school. And then when I finally hit the campus of the all white school, when integration came about and the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was signed into law, something that Charlie Kirk called one of the worst pieces of legislation ever because he claimed it entrenched a DEI culture or something to that effect. Basically saying, I don't want people like me to gain any kind of foothold or equity. So when I hit that campus, I had that same attitude. I wanted to be better than everybody else around me as far as achievement, reading, math, whatever the case may be. So I applied myself all the way from the third grade all the way through graduation. And that earned me a scholarship to an HBCU, Florida A&M University, academic scholarship, the School of Business. And I went in there with the same attitude because I knew I didn't have a fallback position. There was no family business to inherit. There was no, good old boy network I could lean on to move up a ladder. It all had to come from the heart and the head. That's where it came from. So I applied myself in college as much as I could. I would fall asleep with my textbook up against the wall while I'm studying for a class or studying for the next test. I broke the curve in a lot of cases. Because sometimes people didn't score as high as they thought they would, and the professor said, "Okay, we're gonna grade on the curve." They look at me, and I broke the curve because I would have like a 10-point gap or something. I'm not being braggadocious. I'm just telling you the facts. And when I finished my degree in business marketing, I left. I mean, I applied for my graduation. I packed up. I came back to Texas. I'm saying I'm going to plant my feet on the ground here and live my dream back home where everybody was that I knew, my family, my friends, everybody. That wasn't going to happen. I went into business sales, and the people that owned the businesses in that area, they weren't having me. They weren't buying from me. They were more interested in where I came from, basically telling me, "You got some nerve walking up into my business thinking I'm going to do business with you." That's not what they said, but that's what I read from their responses. So that was a roadblock based on discrimination and racism. I didn't let it stop me. I went around it. I relocated to a larger area, got my start all over again in the city, and eventually landed with a Fortune 500 multinational company. And I gravitated to sell the most complicated products and computing systems they had in their lineup. I was working for IBM. I wanted to sell the biggest, the most complicated. So I sold mainframe computer systems to run huge organizations, hospitals, county governments, universities, manufacturing companies, distribution companies, retailers, airlines. Those were the customer sets that I was dealing with. And I wanted the complexity because the complexity allowed me to use my strength, which was my heart and my head, because I could understand those complexities and translate them into what those organizations needed. And I would craft a solution that would get them where they wanted to go. I wanted to be the person that sold them the product, the solution, that if they chose wrong, they lost their job. It was a bet your job decision when they purchased or bought something from me that I put together as a solution. And I can continue to do that even when I went to my next Fortune 500 company. And they came out with a very complex product that never sold before. And I said, I want to do that because I knew I could use the same tools to do that. I needed to know more than everybody else. I needed to know more than my competitors, and I needed to understand my potential customers' business just as well as they did. And I did well. But life was not without complications or discrimination. I had an instance where one of my managers or my manager said the N word in front of me and two coworkers on the way to lunch. And someone asked me in the office when I told them about it, they said, "Okay, you need to turn him in. Are you sure you don't want to go home? Since all this happened." I said, "I got a job to do." I said, "I've got to take care of my family, pay my bills." So I said, I grew up around racists and rednecks that wouldn't let this guy in the club. I continued on. They did whatever they needed to do with him once I did the report, and I kept on going. And, I moved over to a larger office, started selling this more complex product down the road. And then I found out that I was basically being discriminated against from a pay equity standpoint. How I found out, I won't go into. But I confronted the company, the management. And I told them I wanted to be made whole. And I was made whole. Then I finally moved up and become management in that organization. Had multiple people working for me. And I got a call. And someone that saw all of the pay scales said, "Something's not right. you're not getting equity. I did the same thing. I confronted the management and I was made whole retroactively and elevated to the same pay scale. So I'm not saying that I didn't face discrimination and racism, because I did, but I went through it, over and around it. So I want to tell all of the young people out there, particularly young black people, don't allow the environment that we're in right now, which is toxic from the top, the anti-DEI movement, the pronouncement from this man that lost his life they're trying to elevate to near sainthood, when he made statements concerning some of the brightest black women we have. He made a statement saying they don't have the brain processing power to be taken seriously unless they're taking a job from a white man. So that's the bottom line, what he said. And he also said, if I get on an airplane and I see a black pilot, I said, man, I hope he knows what he's doing and I hope he's qualified. Basically saying, I hope he just didn't get there by DEI or affirmative action. His interpretation of DEI, affirmative action, that's not what it's really for. We have people pushing down folks because of their sexual preferences, pushing down women, saying that they need to stay home and have children. That's more fulfilling than having a career. Even said it's not that great being a partner in a law firm. So I'm just saying this. When you look like me, you are going to face racism. You're going to face discrimination. You may not even know it. It may be just from the application you submitted, depending on how your name sounds. And I've been hearing that and seeing videos on that. If the name sounds like it's one of us, put that in this pile over here. That's what Donald Trump did. Him and his father, when they got sued by the Department of Justice, back when they had some apartment complexes, they were having black applicants, putting a C and circle it on the application, putting it to the side. The C meant colored, because they didn't want to rent their units. They didn't want any black tenants. So you're going to face discrimination and racism. But like I said, it never stopped me. I went through it. I went over it. I went around it. I even elevated to a point where I don't think other people wanted to work that hard or study that hard or know their product that well or put in the hours to be the best. And the best doesn't have a color. The best comes from here and here. And now, at the age I am now, those corporate wars are behind me. I have my own business, along with my wife. It's not bound by any of those impediments. And I still do some things for myself as a private contractor when those opportunities come along. But you've got to get in your own heart and head that you're an unstoppable machine, that nothing's going to stop you. Any roadblocks, you're going to go through them. Roadblocks, you're going to go through them, around them, or over them. But you're not going to sit there and stare at them like they're this immovable object, because you can be the irresistible force. So that's what I'm going to say, particularly with the environment we have now. Because this is just the fight for these folks to hang on to the legacy of domination and superiority and being at the top of the socioeconomic heap, because things are changing and it's frightening them. Because in the 2040s, there will be a majority minority country, where the sum of all the minorities will outnumber the non-Hispanic whites. And that's why this fight is so fierce right now. But we can just plow straight through it. You can plow straight through it by using your heart and your head and your determination.